Hello everybody and welcome. This is the story of George. It's not a past lives. It's the only category I could put it in, and you'll kind of understand when I explain it to you. So let me give you some background. There needs to be a background to this story. So in 2021, I'd been helping a wonderful friend with some EVP captures that they had made at their property. And it's set in woodland, and they frequently capture EVPs. Now, EVPs are electronic voice phenomena. So you leave a recording device outside, whether it's a dictaphone or a phone or whatever type of recording device, and it picks up. If there is any EVPs, it'll pick them up. So there's also a great deal of other high strangeness or weirdness going on their property. And the land has, shall we say, many unexplained goings on. And for some reason, I have quite a good ear for picking out these EVPs. And there were many clips that took about, they looked around 5 seconds long when you put them on the screen to edit them. But actually when you started to get into them, they were really, really compressed files. And they ended up, each little segment was about 20 minutes long. And they're just hanging around in the ether. The voices themselves sound quite metallic. So the EVPs were telling the story of some militia, some gun runners from the period of time when the French were in the Arkansas area. And the unusual thing was there was an echo in this recording. And that is really bizarre. That never ever happens. So I decided to reverse the audio. And there, behind the original EVP, was this whole other story. And this is the story that I'm going to tell you. It really was Pandora's box. So the story unfolds in a bar, a speakeasy. And you get a scene set where there's a few men around a poker table. There's girls behind the bar. Alcohol was available, as well as narcotics, and women. It was that type of bar. So the card table erupted in a very scary argument, and one of the men had a duplicate card up his sleeve. He was caught cheating, red-handed. And while this argument ensues, certain names are being dropped in the conversations between the main players. One was a character called Wolf, and he's truly a despicable henchman. He's like a mid-range boss. He was Al Capone's right-hand man in that area. So that tells you the time period we're looking at. Then was Bugsy Moran, Babyface, Shorty Smith, all equally unpleasant characters. Now, I have to say, I hadn't heard of any of those names, apart from Capone. I had to look the others up. But yet, they're definitely players. They're all of the same period. So there's a girl behind the bar, and we're going to call her Lydia. And Lydia is Wolf's girl. She is his mole. And word had got to Wolf from Lydia that another girl who worked in the establishment had a boyfriend who had his own illegal still. Now this other girl is called, we're going to call her Amelia. Now this was the Prohibition time, and the big players were the ones that were running the illegal stills. And it was a very, very dangerous game that Amelia and her boyfriend Jimmy were playing. Jimmy was now in big, big trouble. So Amelia and Jimmy, they looked after Wolf and Lydia's daughter. So when those two were either playing behind the bar or high as a kite or whatever they were doing, this little girl was called Melissa, and she was about 6. She was looked after by Amelia, who also worked behind the bar, and her boyfriend Jimmy. Now Lydia has spilt the beans on Amelia. Whether she's done it when she's high or however she's done it, I don't know. But she has told Wolf that Jimmy has a still. So the EVP story moves back to the men who are playing cards. And having dealt with their card shark, they are now being ordered to go and find Jimmy and his illegal stills, destroy the still. Lydia, clearly high as a kite, totally unfazed by the fact that Amelia is looking after her child, and she has really just shocked her. She has just spilt the beans on her friend. So Amelia lives in the countryside, and the image you get is she's standing at the kitchen sink, washing up dishes. And she sees a car pull up. And you see the type of car. A 1920s, 30s, don't know what particular brand it was, whether it's a Packard or Model T or what it was, but the old-fashioned white wall tyres, running boards, that type of car. She sees this car pull up, men stepping out, and they have guns. And she screams at Jimmy, "Run! Run, Jimmy, run!" And I could hear his footsteps through the leaves. You can hear them padding. And he's running. He's running. And the sense of fear from Amelia, you're looking at this through her eyes. It's really palpable. There's no escape for Jimmy. And I am listening to this and deciphering the audio through headphones. So to my horrified surprise and shock, I hear 3 gunshots in rapid succession. Jimmy went down. And you hear this thud. So Amelia then gets Melissa, 6-year-old daughter of Wolf. And he's the one who'd sent the henchman. And Amelia says, "Melissa, go hide. Just run." But the men, they come for Amelia. They haven't finished just by dispatching Jimmy. They come for her, and it's a very cold January day. They dispatch her, and then they rip her belly. So my thought was, I assume maybe she was pregnant, and she bleeds out in the cold of January. So they then go to burn the stills. So these stills are huge barrels, and they sit on a fire that needs to be kept going constantly, distilling the valuable moonshine. And Jimmy had been foolishly selling it to other hotels. Wolf had found this out from Lydia. This was his mole, and this was him sending his henchmen to destroy the stills and those involved. And what they didn't realize was that Melissa, his Wolf's 6-year-old daughter, was a very bright little 6-year-old. And when Amelia told her to run and hide, she found the warmest place to hide, and that was behind the stills. So when he gave the order to destroy the stills, they also murdered his own daughter. And it's a truly ghastly story. And I was an immediate witness to this and all the events via those EVPs. So now let me move you forward to the experience that I had regarding George. It's during the middle of the night. I'm asleep. It's about 1 a.m. and I was woken by a loud cough in the corner of the room. And it was a bit like an excuse me cough. That type of cough. Goodness me. It frightened the life out of me. In the still of the darkness, indeed, I was quite afraid. But in my mind's eye, I was shown a video, a vision. So they're showing me something. It plays just like a video. It's in colour and detail. And this was brought to me by Spirit. So I see a man, and he's wearing a fedora hat. And he's sitting sideways like this, casually on a bar stool. And he's wearing a blue cotton shirt, beige trousers, And I'm looking down to his shoes, and they're two-tone shoes, like spats, but not quite the same. So his shoes gave me a clue to the time period. And that put me directly around the 1920s to 30s period. And I was just looking at this thing, who the heck is this? I have no idea who he is. But he now very deliberately turned to look directly at me. Now, in dreams or in visions or any kind of dreams that you get, you see people, whether it's yourself or somebody else, from an angle. You never see them full face on, because that is really confrontational. So George is sitting on his bar stool, very relaxed like this, and then he turns and does this. And that was really alarming. Very, very confrontational. And try as hard as I could to clear his image away from my eyes, I couldn't. Kept turning from his sideways profile to face me. And then quite suddenly, he zoomed right up to my face here. That was really alarming. And he presented as a man from the 1920s, just being bitten by. So he presented as a man from the 1920s, 30s area. And at first I thought it was Al Capone. I thought, oh my God, I don't want that moron I don't want to have anything to do with him. And the reason for that thought was because of the research I was doing over these EVPs that I explained earlier. So I started to look him up online, and I looked at all sorts of mugshots from the Prohibition era. And I realized this isn't Capone, because he's quite an ugly pig, really. I then looked through other period photo mugshots of well-known hoods of the era. And then it shot right off the screen, right at me. There was this man's face. There was no mistake. George Kelly Barnes, also known as, AKA, Machine Gun Kelly. Oh my word, I can tell you, he was there in full colour, and that was the man who had presented his face. So why? I was quite alarmed by this, and I rang my friend who had the EVPs on her property that I'd been deciphering. And she is a very talented medium, clairvoyant, and we discussed this at length. And we involved our spirit guides all the way in this conversation, and they were ready to give us the detail of what was being asked. Being asked? So here was what I was required to do, if I wished to, was to assist and observe George going from the waiting room to the light. And that was a massive event. And I was quite honoured to be asked by Spirit to observe and assist this. So George had a very colourful life. He was a bright boy, and he was from a good family. But he was lazy, and he got on with the wrong girlfriend, whose family were a bunch of crooks. And without putting any judgment their way, I would have to say that the young men of that area, they did have a difficult choice to make, coming out of World War I period, when so many lives had been lost. And the world then went into Spanish flu, which took away yet more lives. Then the economic depression. And in 1919, America had the prohibition laws in place. And President Woodrow Wilson, he had vetoed these originally. He'd said no to this sort of 18th Amendment. This was the Volstead law. He'd said no. And Congress overrode him in 1919, and it became law in 1920. the law of prohibition. So work was hard to find and prohibition was a moneymaker. And many joined into the illegal stills and all that went with it. And that's mainly being run by gangsters, Lucky Luciano, Capone, etc. So you only have to read John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath, to see how devastating the financial crash was when Wall Street hit the floor and ordinary Americans worked so hard, and some took what they perceived to be the easier option. George, foolishly, he took this route. He took to crime, robbing banks, and he was eventually caught. And that was after trying to kidnap a wealthy oil magnate. I think his name was Herschel. And it was a very ill thought out plan. And he was caught and he was convicted in 1933 with his girlfriend, and he was sentenced to serve life in Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. Life meant life till you died. So he died of a heart attack in 1954 in the prison. And during his time in that penitentiary, he was mocked by other prisoners and called the choir boy. Not much of a machine gun Kelly, and he was a model prisoner, really. So perhaps he had found his karma. Who knows? So I connected with George psychically, and he presented himself, the image I got, sort of like blue and purple. That was the lighting, as it were. And he was standing with his head bowed, like this. He was very humble, very contrite, and he had really short hair. It's all shaved at the sides, there's just a flap of hair on the top of his head. And the fullness of his face in his mugshots, that had gone. And he was now quite thin. But his head was bowed, and I said to him, George, I want to ask you, did you kill the 3 policemen? And it was a mystery at the time. And I wanted to show George that I had done some research on him, that I had bothered to look up what he was about in his lifetime. So he responded with, yes, I had no right to destroy the lives of those men and their families, and I was wrong. So I now hear George saying, I have Melissa with me. So I am now observing what is taking place. I have Melissa with me. And I say, Lydia's daughter, Melissa? Yes. Yes, George said yes. So I was aware that Lydia was present, somewhere over to this side. And she was in some kind of limbo land. It was dark, place of darkness, where she was halfway between George, who was sitting in a waiting room. It's the only way I can describe it, as a waiting room. And there are 2 doorkeepers at the door. Now, these doorkeepers are not beings like we would imagine. These are more ethereal, cryptid-style beings. And they are the doorkeepers. So it's a one-way traffic. You don't get to go back to the dark once you've gone to the light. You're protected from that. So this Lydia was in this, what I can only call darkness. So it wasn't as dark for Lydia as what was beyond her. And that was black. Just a void of blackness. And there were fissures in this blackness. And I could see in these fissures, this was where Capone resided. And it was like there was fire blazing behind them. But all you could see was this blackness, and then these vertical fissures. And every now and again, you'd see him And he came right up to the fissures, looking. He can't see out. Who's there? Who's there? Who's talking? And he knows someone's talking. He doesn't know who it is. So Lydia was afraid. Can he see me? Can he see me? Does he know I'm here? And she's referring to Capone. So I looked across to where he was. And he was a snarling creature. And he was trying to peer through these fissures in the darkness. All he could see was darkness. He was angry. And he was cursing and swearing. And I asked George, I said, George, please just ignore him and continue. And Capone was absolutely vile. His cursing was really appalling. And I eventually told him, I said, look, just shut up. Let George speak. And Lydia was reticent because she could hear Capone. And she was afraid, and George was trying to reassure her. He said, look, I have Melissa. All you have to do is go to the light. This is what George is saying. Listen to my voice and listen for Melissa's voice. Come to the light, follow the light. But Lydia would not go. She was afraid. And it was her guilt at having tipped off the henchman of Wolf that was overwhelming her, because she still belonged to Capone. And he was clearly quite a demonic creature. His energy was vile, and he just kept on trying to be. I mean, he was as offensive as he could be. And he would say, yeah, I'm coming through, okay, I'm coming through. But the door was not open for him. And I kept on telling him, please be quiet. And eventually, what we call the doorkeepers, they silenced him, so he could neither see nor hear anything. So George was still in the waiting room with this little Melissa. And this was his final step, to truly go to the light. There was now silence. And it was a big silence. And I thought, because of Capone's ranting, I thought, have I lost the connection? Which happens sometimes. I said, George, are you still there? George, are you there? I didn't know whether he was there. I then heard someone called Jimmy. And it was Jimmy the Stills man. I knew, this is Jimmy here. They are here. They're both here. I said, George and Melissa, they're both with you? And he said, yes, they're both here. So Lydia was staying where she was in her purgatory. But George had moved on. So I said, thank you. So last night, before I did this story and I was doing the preparation for it, working out what I was going to say, George came to me through the night and he just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for telling his story and understanding. That's what he wanted me to understand, was that he was grateful for my understanding of his viewpoint, taking it from that era where they had choices to make and it wasn't all cut and dried. We can say with the benefit of hindsight, tut and all of that. But they were very different times, very, very different times. So I reconnected with George, and he's got quite a southern drawl. He's quite slow to speak and very deliberate in his choice of words. So I asked him, why did he do those things? He said, no, he was lazy. He was weak. And he fell into bad company. He knew it was wrong, but it was exciting at the time. He'd been a bright kid, but he didn't want to do schoolwork. And Prohibition and the era of the gangsters, it opened new doors for him. It was edgy, and it was a bit heroic in some photos, and he took the wrong turn. He made the wrong choice. So I say to George, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be a witness and participate in it. And his story most definitely taught me about redemption and judgment. So during the whole process, I decided I wanted to try and give Amelia a name. And it's been very difficult. I haven't been able to. Can't research her. I connected via spirit to her sister, who was called Josephine. And at first I thought I was talking to Amelia, but I wasn't. It was this sister. And she was a hairdresser. She was much younger. She was only 15. She was much younger than Amelia. And she just started up her business. And as I was trying to talk to her, in came this big, jolly, booming voice. A lady called Sarah, who was a really strong woman, and she had been devastated by the loss of her daughter. So Sarah was Josephine and Amelia's mother. And she explained and described their house in the forest. And I asked her if there was somewhere that I could trace their names. Lordy, no. They're mixed race, part black. Nobody counts us. That was truly shocking. So Sarah was the driving force in a way behind this. And I made her a promise that I would not let Amelia go unrecognized. And she wanted this story to be told. And I'm honoring Sarah and telling the story of her daughter Amelia. As well as George, Amelia is in there as well. So her daughter is also not forgotten. So thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the story as far as you can enjoy it. But it's a really interesting insight into redemption. And yeah, there's redemption for everyone if you do the work. Even Capone, if he is prepared to do the work, there'll be redemption for him. So thank you, friends. And if you put any comments you have in the box below, I'd be very grateful for that. Thank you for that. And see you next time. Bye for now. Namaste.